Friday nights at Bella Not were a kind of beautiful chaos. The air smelled of garlic, simmering tomato, and the memory of 1,000 Italian Sunday dinners. Wine glasses clinked. Silverware scraped against ceramic. Conversations bloomed in 2 languages simultaneously, English and Italian, weaving together like old friends who never needed to explain themselves. And moving through all of it, fluid as water between stones, was Sophia Mitchell. 28 years old. Dark hair pulled back. Apron tied perfectly. She carried 4 plates at once, 3 balanced along her left arm with surgical precision, a 4th gripped in her right hand, navigating the dining room the way a dancer navigates a stage. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Pure muscle memory built over years of service in this city's unforgiving restaurant industry. But Sophia was more than efficient. She was observant in ways that most people never notice in a server, because great servers are invisible by design. She knew that table 7 always needed more water before they asked. She knew that the couple at table 9 would argue gently over dessert before finally sharing a tiramisu. She knew that the kitchen ran 7 minutes behind on Fridays because Marco always called in a prep cook who moved too slowly. She knew Bella Not the way you only know a place when it has become part of your identity. And she knew the man in the corner. Candle Hash Alessandro, the man the room feared. Alessandro Vitoli arrived every Friday at exactly 8 o'clock. Never early. Never late. Always alone. Always the same table, the corner booth with sightlines to both the entrance and the kitchen. The table of a man who had learned, very early in life, that surprises were rarely good things. He was not particularly tall. He was not loud. He did not flash his wealth or let his reputation do his talking. He wore dark clothes, expensive but understated, and he sat with the kind of stillness that predators have, not aggressive, just completely, effortlessly present. Most people in the restaurant recognized him. The women at table 3 whispered to each other behind their menus. The men at the bar studied their drinks a little too carefully when he passed. The new busboy had been pulled aside on his first shift and told, quietly but firmly, "Don't stare at the man in the corner. Don't make conversation. Just do your job and let him be." Alessandro Vitoli was, by reputation and by fact, one of the most powerful figures in Manhattan's underworld. A man whose name opened doors, and occasionally, ended conversations permanently. But Sophia Mitchell treated him like everyone else. Water. Bread. Osso buco. Red wine. The Barolo. Still water. No ice. She wrote nothing down because she never needed to. 2 years of Fridays had made his preferences as familiar to her as the creak of the 3rd floorboard near the kitchen door. She made no eye contact that lingered too long. She offered no nervous smiles, no anxious attempts to charm. She gave him what every customer deserved: professionalism, efficiency, and dignity. And Alessandro Vitoli, who moved through a world where people either feared him or tried to use him, had been coming back every single Friday for 2 years because of it. High voltage sign The Spark, enter Tommy. Then came Tommy Greco. 26 years old. Business school diploma still fresh enough to smell like ambition. His uncle, the original owner of Bella Not, had fallen ill, and in the way of Italian families, responsibility had passed sideways before it could pass down properly. Tommy had been managing the restaurant for exactly 3 weeks when he began dismantling everything that made it work. He had spreadsheets where there should have been instinct. He had profit margins where there should have been loyalty. He had efficiency metrics where there should have been humanity. And on one particular Friday, he decided to make an example. The targets were Mr. and Mrs. Castellano, both well into their 70s, both dressed in clothes a decade out of fashion, both sitting at table 6 with their hands intertwined over the white tablecloth. They had been coming to Bella Not for longer than Sophia had been alive. Mrs. Castellano had lost her son the year before, and this Friday routine, this specific table, this specific restaurant, was the thread that kept her anchored to the world. Tommy didn't know that. Tommy didn't care. He wanted the table turned over for revenue. Sophia tried to protect them quietly, the way good servers protect the people they care about, without drama, without confrontation. She checked on them gently. She offered the dessert menu as a soft extension of their evening. She bought them time. But Tommy escalated. And Tommy had no restraint. He walked into the dining room during service and, in front of every guest in the restaurant, demanded that the elderly couple order dessert or leave. His voice carried. It was designed to. Mrs. Castellano's face went pale. Mr. Castellano reached for his wallet with shaking hands. The warm, safe world of Bella Not, the one Sophia had spent 3 years building table by table, relationship by relationship, shattered in a single moment. Sophia stepped forward. She contradicted Tommy in front of everyone. And Tommy fired her on the spot. 5 words. 3 years. Gone. Sophia stood in the middle of the dining room, face burning, aware of every eye watching her. She recognized most of them. People she had served 100 times. People who knew her name. And then she heard the sound that would change everything. The slow, deliberate scrape of a chair being pushed back from table 7. Alessandro Vitoli stood up. He placed his napkin on the table with the precision of someone who was about to do something very, very intentional. And he walked toward Tommy Greco. If you've ever seen a room hold its breath, this was that moment. Stay with me, because what happens next is something you will not forget. When power bows to kindness. Last time, you watched a woman lose everything she'd spent 3 years building. In 5 words, in 30 seconds, in front of everyone she cared about. But you also watched a man stand up from a corner table. And tonight, you find out exactly why. What Alessandro Vitoli does in the next 10 minutes will cost him an obscene amount of money. It will upend the balance of power in a small Italian restaurant. It will humiliate a man who thought he was untouchable. And it will terrify Sophia Mitchell more than any of it. Because the most dangerous thing isn't a powerful man who wants to hurt you. It's a powerful man who wants to protect you. Money with wings the purchase, fury wrapped in silence. Alessandro Vitoli crossed the dining room the way he moved through every space, without hurry, without aggression, but with a gravity that made everything around him slow down and pay attention. Tommy Greco saw him coming. His confident fury faltered. You could see it happen in real time, the recognition, the recalibration, the sudden awareness that he had said and done all of this in front of the wrong man. Alessandro stopped 3 feet away. He slipped one hand into his pocket. He looked at Tommy with eyes that were dark and completely, terrifyingly calm. How much does this place cost? Tommy laughed. Nervous. Uncertain. I'm sorry. The restaurant. How much to buy it? It's not for sale. Alessandro pulled out his phone. He began typing. He didn't look up. Everything is for sale. What's your price? And this is the moment the room understood what was happening. Not a threat. Not a performance. Just a man, a very powerful, very serious man, who had decided, in the space of 5 minutes, to solve a problem the only way he knew how. Tommy's uncle arrived 20 minutes later. Still in his bathrobe. Still in his slippers. 74 years old and sick with something no one talked about openly. He shuffled in with a cane and looked at Alessandro with tired resignation, the look of a man who understood, immediately, how this night was going to end. Papers were signed. Numbers were exchanged in tones too low for most of the room to hear. A check was produced. Hands were shaken. Alessandro Vitoli now owned controlling interest in Bella Not. He turned to Tommy, who had gone from red to white to something beyond both, and delivered his verdict in the same quiet tone he'd used all evening. Get your things. You don't work here anymore. Tommy left without a word. The door closed behind him, and the sound echoed through the silent restaurant like the last note of a song. Alessandro looked around the room. In English first, then Italian, he told every guest that their meal was on the house. That they could stay as long as they liked. That they could order whatever they wanted. The tension broke. Conversation slowly resumed. Mr. and Mrs. Castellano sat at table 6, still holding hands, eyes wide. And Alessandro walked to Sophia, who had pressed herself against the wall near the kitchen, trying very hard to disappear. He stopped in front of her. Close enough that she could smell the faint edge of expensive cologne. Woodsy. Quiet. You have your job back. If you want it. Sophia stared at him. Her mind was completely blank. He waited. When she said nothing, he nodded once, as if her silence had told him everything he needed to know. Then he walked back to table 7, sat down, and picked up his fork. His osso buco had gone cold during all of it. He ate it anyway. Runner the retreat. Sophia runs. She didn't go back on Saturday. She stayed in her apartment in Queens, staring at a phone that kept buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. Messages from his people. A gruff-voiced man. A composed woman. And one call that was just silence, then a click. Sophia deleted them all. She knew who Alessandro Vitoli was. She had always known. That was precisely why she had spent 2 years maintaining professional distance. Polished, efficient, impenetrable distance. Because she understood the math of getting close to men like him. It never added up to anything safe. It never added up to anything free. She had seen it before. The way power wrapped itself in generosity until it became impossible to tell the difference between a gift and a debt. She took a job at a steakhouse in Midtown instead. Terrible hours. 15% less pay. A manager whose eyes lingered too long. Co-workers who were cold and competitive and entirely uninterested in the people they served. She hated every shift. But she went. And Alessandro, who had no logical reason to care whether she came back, found himself calling her number again. Just once. It went straight to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. But 3 days later, while driving through the Bronx on business, he saw her. Walking out of a restaurant she'd clearly just interviewed at, shoulders low, face tired, checking her phone with a frown she didn't bother to hide. He pulled to the curb. Lowered the window. Sophia. She looked up. And in 1 second, every wall she had ever built came slamming down like a portcullis. Raincloud hashed the conversation in the rain. The truth comes out. Get in. I'll give you a ride. No, thank you. I'm fine. It's starting to rain. It wasn't. But the sky had turned the color of an argument, and they both knew it was only a matter of time. He got out of the car. He stood on the sidewalk in front of her, and for the first time in 2 years, the professional distance between them collapsed, not through force, but through honesty. You can't just buy a restaurant because someone gets fired, she said. That's insane. I can do whatever I want. That's exactly the problem. And then it poured. They stood in the rain, neither of them moving, while Sophia told him what she'd never said to his face. That she knew who he was. That she'd always known. That she kept her distance on purpose, because getting close to men like him meant accepting a world she didn't want, owing debt she couldn't repay, becoming a problem someone else solved with money and power. Alessandro listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend himself. When she finished, he said something she didn't expect. You were the only person in that building who treated me like a human being. Sophia went still. Not a monster. Not a god. Just a man who wanted to eat his dinner in peace. For 2 years, every Friday, you gave me that. So when I saw you humiliated for doing the right thing, I handled it. I don't need you to handle things for me. I know. That's one of the reasons I did it. And then he told her about his mother. A small restaurant in Little Italy. A woman who worked 16 hours a day and made everything from scratch and believed that good food deserved good wine. A woman who lost everything when the mob wanted protection money she couldn't pay. A woman who worked 3 jobs until her heart gave out at 46. This place reminds me of her restaurant, he said. The smell. The sounds. The way the kitchen feels alive during service. Being here makes me feel connected to her again. I'm not walking away from it. Sophia stood in the rain for a long time after he drove away. She already knew she was going back. She had known it the moment he mentioned his mother. Key the return, and the beginning of something new. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday evening, Sophia stood outside Bella not for 10 minutes before walking through the door. The dinner rush was in full swing. The new staff looked overwhelmed. And Alessandro sat at table 7. Of course he did. His eyes found her the moment she walked in. He looked not surprised, but vindicated, like a man who had been patient enough to wait for the only outcome that made sense. Sophia walked over and stood before him, heart pounding in her throat. I'm here. If the offer is still good. It's still good. Same terms. Just work. Nothing else. Agreed. She turned to leave. His voice stopped her. Tommy tried to sue. My lawyers had a conversation with him. He dropped it. Sophia decided, very deliberately, not to ask what kind of conversation that had been. You should know what you're walking into, Alessandro said quietly. This world. My world. It doesn't play by the same rules you're used to. I know. Do you? She met his eyes, dark and intense and completely focused on her, and said the truest thing she'd said to him in 2 years. I've known for 2 years, Mr. Vitoli. That's why I kept my distance. But apparently, distance isn't an option anymore. No, he said quietly. It's not. The walls we build and the ones we finally let fall. The shift nobody expected. There's a kind of closeness that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with declarations or grand moments or the sweeping crescendo of a movie scene. It comes quietly. A cup of coffee left on a desk with exactly the right amount of sugar. A security guard who waits until you're safely in your cab before he leaves his post. A broken air conditioning unit, broken for 8 months, ignored by everyone, suddenly, inexplicably, replaced with something better. Sophia noticed all of it. She told herself she wasn't noticing. She maintained the terms of their agreement with the dedication of someone who understood exactly how much depended on keeping the lines clear. Just work. That was the deal. But the deal had a leak in it, and it was getting harder to pretend otherwise. Clipboard the promotion. Business, he said. 2 weeks after her return, Alessandro called her into the office and offered her a promotion. Operations manager. Inventory. Ordering. Staff scheduling. A 40% increase in pay. I didn't ask for a promotion, she said. You're getting one anyway. You know this restaurant better than anyone here. You won't steal from me. You won't cut corners. I trust you. That word, trust, landed differently than he probably intended. Because trust, from Alessandro Vitoli, was not a casual thing. It was not given as a formality or a courtesy. It was given the way rare things are given, carefully, with full knowledge of its value, and with the understanding that it would not be offered twice. Sophia took the promotion, and told herself it was strictly professional. Then she spent her first Monday morning sitting beside him at a desk, shoulder occasionally brushing shoulder, catching the faint edge of his cologne when he leaned in to point at something on the screen, and admitted, privately, that professional was becoming a complicated word. Cityscape with Stars Brooklyn, his world, up close. The wine distributor cancelled their account without explanation. Alessandro made one phone call and learned why. Ties to a rival family, unwilling to be associated with the Vitoli name. The solution required going to Brooklyn. In person. That evening. Why do I need to be there? Sophia asked. Because you're the operations manager. And because they'll offer better terms if they see I'm serious about the restaurant. Bringing you shows investment. She didn't like it. She went anyway. The building had no sign. The interior smelled like cigars and expensive whiskey. Men in suits played cards at low tables and looked up when Alessandro entered the way employees look up when the person with real authority walks in, not out of fear, exactly, but out of respect that had been earned through means she didn't want to fully understand. She watched Alessandro navigate that room. Watched how his posture never fully relaxed. How his eyes tracked every movement without appearing to. How he talked about his mother's belief in good wine, and how, for just a moment, the room stopped being dangerous and became something almost human. They left with terms 30% better than what they'd had before. Those prices are too good, Sophia said in the car afterward. What does he want in return? Goodwill. Future favors. Currency that has nothing to do with money. That's not how normal business works. I never claimed this was normal business. They drove back to Manhattan in silence while Sophia turned over everything she had seen. The power. The efficiency. The loyalty built on foundations she couldn't see but could feel in her bones. It was exactly as dangerous as she had feared. And somehow, for reasons she wasn't ready to name, it was also more human than she had expected. Frying pan with egg the night the kitchen broke, and something else didn't. She should have gone home that night. Her shift was over. Her bag was collected. She was 3 steps from the door. Then she heard the shouting from the kitchen. The sous chef was quitting. Mid-service. Apron thrown on the floor, a string of Italian invective still hanging in the air, 2 tables waiting on Aunt Reese, and Chef Antonio staring at Sophia with the wild eyes of a man drowning in very small water. I can't do this alone. Not tonight. Sophia tied on a borrowed chef's coat and stayed. For 2 hours, she moved through that kitchen with the focus of someone who remembered what it felt like to build something with their hands. Following Antonio's instructions. Timing the plates. Managing the chaos of a short-staffed service with a quiet, efficient ferocity that the kitchen staff would talk about for weeks afterward. When the last table was served and the kitchen finally went quiet, she leaned against the counter and laughed. Pure relief. Pure exhaustion. Pure joy. Alessandro was waiting at the front when she came back out. He had seen her through the window. Have you eaten? No. Neither have I. Sit. He disappeared into the kitchen. She sat at table 7, his table, for the first time, and was too tired to care about the symbolism. He returned 15 minutes later with 2 plates of pasta. Simple. Perfect. The smell alone undid something in her chest. You cook, she said, surprised. My mother taught me. Before she couldn't anymore. They ate in comfortable silence while Manhattan moved beyond the windows. And when they finally started talking, really talking, for the first time, with no walls and no pretense, Sophia told him things she rarely told anyone. 7 foster homes between age 6 and 18. Some better than others. None permanent. A mother lost to addiction. A father who was never in the picture. And Mrs. Huang, the last home, the best home, a widowed woman who took in children because her own had grown and moved away. The woman who taught Sophia to cook. The woman who made her believe that restaurants were places where anyone could belong, as long as they showed up and did the work. She died 6 years ago, Sophia said. But I visit her grave on her birthday. Bring flowers. Tell her about my life. She would be proud, Alessandro said. Not empty comfort. A statement of fact from a man who understood exactly what it meant to build yourself from nothing, in memory of someone who believed in you. They sat in the quiet restaurant until almost 2 in the morning. Espresso cups empty. The city humming softly beyond the glass. 2 people who had spent years being careful, with each other, with the world, with the tender and breakable parts of themselves, finally, gently, allowing someone else to see. Sunrise what this story was really about. This story, at its surface, is about a woman who gets fired and a dangerous man who buys a restaurant. But that's not really what it's about at all. It's about the quiet, revolutionary power of treating people with dignity. Sophia didn't do anything dramatic to earn Alessandro's loyalty. She didn't try to. She just treated a difficult, dangerous, isolated man the same way she treated everyone else, with professionalism, with fairness, with a kind of uncomplicated respect that said, I see you as a human being, not a legend, not a threat, not a resource. And that simple, consistent, unperformed decency, was something Alessandro Vitoli had not experienced in a very long time. It's also a story about 2 people who were shaped by loss. Alessandro lost his mother to a world that never gave her a fair chance. Sophia lost her childhood to a system that passed her from home to home until she learned to belong everywhere and nowhere. Both of them built walls. Both of them learned that survival required distance. And yet, in a small restaurant that smelled like garlic and history, over plates of simple food at nearly 2 in the morning, something different became possible. Not safety. Not certainty. Not the comfortable, predictable warmth of a life without risk. Something more honest than that. Connection. If this story moved you, if Sophia's quiet courage spoke to something in you, if Alessandro's grief and loyalty felt familiar in ways you didn't expect, then you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We tell stories here. Real ones. Human ones. Stories about the complicated, beautiful, dangerous, tender business of living and loving and surviving in a world that doesn't always make it easy. If you haven't subscribed yet, Please do. It takes 2 seconds, and it means that next time we tell a story like this one, you won't miss it. If this story made you feel something, tell us in the comments. Tell us which moment hit hardest. Tell us what you would have done in Sophia's place. Tell us if you've ever met someone who saw you clearly, at just the right moment, and changed the direction of your life. We read every comment. Every one. And share this with someone who needs to hear it tonight. You know who that person is. Herb the Life Lesson. Dignity is not a small thing. We live in a world that rewards loudness. That celebrates the big gesture, the grand declaration, the sweeping dramatic act. We forget, so easily, that the most transformative things are often the quietest ones. The way you treat the person who serves your food. The choice to protect someone who can't protect themselves, even when there's no audience and no reward. The decision to stay, in a kitchen, in a conversation, in a relationship, when it would be easier to leave. Sophia didn't change Alessandro's life by being extraordinary. She changed it by being consistent. By showing up every Friday and offering him the one thing that power and money and reputation cannot buy. The experience of being seen as an ordinary person, worthy of ordinary kindness. And Alessandro didn't earn Sophia's trust by being impressive. He earned it by being honest. By acknowledging his world for what it was. By refusing to pretend that his love for his mother, his grief, his longing for something real and warm and alive, were weaknesses rather than the most human things about him. The lesson, if there is one, is this. How you treat people, especially the ones you don't have to be kind to, is the truest thing about you. Be the person who treats everyone like they matter. You never know when that quiet, steady kindness is the only real thing someone has. And you never know what it might quietly, gently, irrevocably change. End.